So, you know you want to adopt from foster care, and you know that it's possible to adopt waiting children without really being a foster parent. But now you have the difficult task of trying to find an adoption agency that actually does this. Finding the right adoption agency can be a really intimidating process. Not all foster care adoption agencies are created equal. So today we're going to talk about the 5 qualities that you should be looking for in your foster care adoption agency. Hey, welcome back to my channel. But if you're new here, my name is Katie and I'm an adoption consultant, and I work with families from all over the country to help them adopt waiting children from foster care. My husband Nick and I adopted our 3 awesome kids from foster care, and now I'm on a mission to help you do the same. And if for some reason you're just clicking on this video and you don't even know what I'm talking about, like adopting waiting kids from foster care, it is a thing. I have a very popular video about this exact topic that I will link above, which will help you understand kind of how the process works, what it is, and how it might be the perfect path to adoption for you and your family. However, if you already know that is a thing and you're like, Katie, help me find the right agency, I'm here for you. I do work with clients all of the time who I help them find agencies in their area, and now I want to help you do the same. Before I jump in, I just want to mention that if you are looking for a foster care adoption agency, you definitely want to grab my freebie, which is in the description below. I created a list of the 10 questions you should ask every foster care adoption agency before you decide to go with them. And this is in a worksheet format, so you can just download it, print it out if you want, and then call agencies in your area or read through their websites and get the information you need to make the best choice. So definitely grab that from the description box below. It's free, it's my gift to you. But today I want to talk through what are some of the qualities that you should be looking for in an agency, that you should be looking for when you're asking those questions. And so number 1 is you should be looking for experienced social workers. And when I say experienced, they don't have to have years and years and years of experience, but what we're really talking about here is not having a high turnover rate of caseworkers with the agency you choose. Unfortunately, this is a common phenomenon where you'll have a foster care agency, and social workers are great people who are often overworked, underpaid, you get the gist. And so there does tend to be somewhat of a high turnover of workers in certain agency environments. But when you have an experienced social worker who has been at this agency for a while, or at least the agency doesn't tend to have a high turnover rate, then you can make sure that you will have consistency for both you and your future child as you walk through the adoption process with this agency. It would be really difficult if halfway through the process there was all of a sudden like a new person there. I think that would be hard for you, but it would also be really hard on your kid if visits have already started and now they have to adjust to another new person in this transition period. So if you can find an agency that has a lower turnover rate, that is great. I do know that in state agencies, there's often a higher turnover rate rather than in private agencies, but that's definitely something to ask around about and to look into. And another benefit of having these experienced social workers is that they really truly understand the adoption process. They understand all the steps involved, and they'll know how to answer your questions. I know that our social worker, Mary, was like amazing. She answered so many questions. She was super knowledgeable about the process, and I'm really thankful that we had her support and help throughout that entire journey. And she actually helped us with both of our adoptions. So that was another benefit, is that because she was working there for so long and has been working there for so long, we didn't even have to get a new caseworker when we had our second adoption, which was really great. And if you're considering adopting more than once, you could potentially have that continuity as well, which is just really helpful. A second quality that I think is so important to find in an adoption agency is that they have clear and consistent communication. Now, I don't expect your social worker to be on call to answer you any time of day, any moment. I don't think that's healthy, and that's not good work-life balance for them. But what I do expect is that they are communicating at a consistent time frame. So let's say you email them or call them, they get back to you within at least a couple of business days as it fits into their schedule. Also, with this communication piece, you want to make sure that they are actually answering your questions and communicating next steps in a timely manner, and also in a way that is really clear to you. Now, with how amazing our agency was, I will say this: their communication was always very fast. As in, if I asked a question, they got back to me immediately. Like sometimes they would answer me in the middle of the night when like I wasn't sending it expecting them to answer. It was just on my mind in the moment. And I was like, whoa, you didn't need to answer that fast. But I always was really appreciative of how quickly they answered things. However, what I noticed with our agency was if we didn't ask very specific questions, it was almost like they were so used to the process and understood it so well, they kind of assumed that we did as well. And that's where it got a little bit frustrating at times. I can think of a couple instances where something wasn't communicated very well, and we didn't find out till after the fact that there was some other step we missed or some piece of information that we missed. And so that was my only complaint really with our agency, because otherwise they were completely amazing when it came to communication. Just know that whole phrase, what is it? The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like that's definitely true in most of these situations. And so just make sure you're asking questions if you want to fully understand the process. Another quality that I would look for in an adoption agency, and I'll be the first to admit that this is super common. Like to me, this is kind of like above and beyond, but I want to mention it anyway, is that your agency has strong connections. And I mean two things when I say that. So first of all, you want to make sure that your agency has strong connections in regards to services that they know of in the area. So maybe they can recommend some occupational therapists for your child. Maybe they can recommend some mental health therapists or some good doctors in the area. I know that our agency did. They had like a list of people that they had families who had worked with previously, who had great experiences with them. And because they were so experienced, that lent them to actually knowing some of those resources locally. I do think this goes hand in hand with them having experience, because if they have experience matching families with children, they will also have some ideas of the types of professionals that these families use to help their children. And the second piece of this connections, I do think this one is more rare. And so I want to put a disclaimer here. Do not reject an agency because they don't have this. But if you find an agency, if you're down to 2 agencies and one of them seems to have this and one doesn't, definitely worth looking into. And that is, do they have strong connections with other states, other counties, other people within the adoption world? The reason that this is a huge benefit to you is that if you are looking to adopt waiting children from foster care, you have a much wider pool of children who are looking for families. And I know for our agency, which we're in Ohio, they actually had connections with agencies in Texas, in Oregon, in Washington State, even places that were pretty far away. And so they had placed children from those states multiple times to families in Ohio. And the reasoning is that the other agencies knew that the families that this agency trained were pretty competent and were ready to take care of these kids because they had good training and they had good experiences and they didn't have people disrupting adoptions. And so for that state, they're like, wow, this agency seems promising. They're really communicative. We want to work with them if possible. And other counties in your state, they may also have connections to social workers at other counties. All 3 of my kids were from Ohio, but they were from different counties. And we heard about them not because they were on some sort of waiting child list that we could see, but because there was a connection with another caseworker or agency in that county. So that's just something that I would view as an added bonus if you can find an agency that does seem to have connections, or if they've placed kids from other states previously, you can ask them if they've ever worked with the same state or county multiple times. Those are all great things to look into. The last 2 are ones that I think most agencies will provide, but you want to look into the level at which they provide them. So number 4 is, do they offer flexibility with trainings? When you go through your foster care adoption process, you will have to take hours of classes before you can receive your foster care license, usually before you do your home study in most states. And that obviously takes up a pretty significant amount of time. I know in some cases the agencies can get you through really fast. In other cases, it can take a long time to get through those classes depending on how often they offer them. We know people who went through the state agency in our area, so through the county, and what they found was that their classes and their trainings took a lot longer than people who had gone through private agencies. And I'm guessing that has to do with just a lack of staffing at times, and they don't have enough people who can do it consistently in order to get those classes done. One thing I really appreciated about our agency is they did have a pretty consistent offering of their classes, even though it's a smaller agency. And there were times where we had to miss one and make it up later, but there were even times where if they realized we were going to have to wait extra long to make it up, the caseworker would basically do the session with us one-on-one, which I thought was really above and beyond and really kind of them to work with our schedule. So that is just something to look for. Do they have flexibility? I think especially nowadays, our first adoption was pre-COVID. Now in this post-COVID world, a lot of these agencies are still offering online classes, which is awesome because for us, we had to go in every Friday for like 2 or 3 hours on a Friday night to get our trainings, which is not the most ideal. But if you could take some online, even the ones where you have to have your camera on and you have to interact, you can stay home and not drive 30, 40 minutes, an hour to the agency. So you can have more flexibility on how far away your agency is if you don't really have to go there as much. So that's just one like kind of practical thing to look into. And the fifth one is also a very practical piece of advice, but you want to look for an agency that offers post-adoption support. Now I know if you're towards the beginning of this adoption process, you're looking for an agency, I think the most intimidating part right now probably feels like just finding an agency, doing all the classes, fitting it in your schedule. But newsflash, the most difficult part of your adoption journey is actually not going to be the whole finding an agency, taking classes. It is more than likely going to be once your child is home with you and you're struggling. Either you're struggling or they're struggling or both. Maybe bonding isn't as easy as you thought. Maybe you're falling into a little bit of post-adoption blues or post-adoption depression. Maybe your child is exhibiting really difficult behaviors and you have no clue how to handle them. That is where support groups come in handy. Now, not every agency will offer support groups. I think this is a little bit rare, but some do. But if you can find an agency that has support groups, that is a great resource for you to have if you need it. Our agency did have a support group. They actually still do. I think it's either every Friday or every other Friday. And to be honest, we went a few times at the very beginning of our journey, but it's just so far away from our house and it's at a time when our kids are like needing to go to bed. It's just a little bit inconvenient for our schedule. But I can definitely, looking back, I can see how some of that would have been super helpful for me to go to if it would have worked out logistically. So if you can find an agency that offers that and it's pretty close to your house, that is a huge perk that you at least have that option. And I know that the one that our agency offered, they actually had free childcare as well. And here's the thing, if you can't find an agency that offers a support group, it's okay because there are often other support groups in your area. If you type in adoption support group in blank and choose like a bigger city near you, you will often find that there are churches that offer those. There are other, maybe the county offers one. So it's not a deal breaker. And honestly, I wouldn't say that any individual one of these is a deal breaker for me. Maybe communication. That might be the only one that would be a deal breaker for me. But for most of these, you don't want to find an agency that has none of them, okay? Or like only good communication. You want to look for ones that have some combination of these good qualities so that you can have a good adoption experience where you have all the support you need. So once again, don't forget to download that freebie down below with questions you can ask any adoption agency you contact so you can find the best agency for you. And I have another resource coming out really soon that if you're in the midst of trying to find an agency and you're just completely struggling, that's going to really help you. So keep your eye out for that as well. Well, that's all for today. I will catch you next week with another video all about finding an adoption agency. So until then, I hope you're having an awesome day and I will see you next week.